Tree Talking Time is brought to you by Conkeys Outdoors. Get all your hound hunting needs at conkeys.com. Welcome to Tree Talking Time, where we talk all things tree dogs, from the smallest feists to the largest hounds, treating squirrels to bears and everything in between. And from time to time, we might even run a little fast game. Welcome back to another episode of Tree Talking Time. If you listened to last week's podcast and you either want to donate a puppy, donate gear, or have a child that wants to enter the contest to win a puppy or possibly gear, you don't have a whole lot of time. If you are listening to this the day it comes out, you only have a little over a week. So definitely get any letters and contact Caleb or Amanda with any donations as soon as possible. I know my son Charlie, he wrote a letter and we just dropped it in the mail today, so hopefully it'll make it in time. But just want to make sure everyone is aware that those letters need to be in by July 31st, so the end of the month. In that episode, I talked about how I'm donating a puppy, and because I was having a litter of puppies, I decided to record this podcast with my good friend Dr. Erin Dove. We kind of went over a lot of things about care of female from pre-breeding all the way through puppy care. And actually, there's a few things that she recommended in here. I didn't even have time to follow through on her recommendations. We recorded this, and then the next morning, I went out and I already had 2 puppies born the next morning. And by the end of the day, we had 10. So unfortunately, 1 didn't make it, but we have 9 healthy puppies, and here we are about 10 days in. Any day now, we should be opening some eyes and been having a lot of fun with them. This podcast is just packed full of information. Honestly, I would recommend sitting down with a pen and paper and writing some of this stuff down. There are links in the description for some of the products that she talks about. Erin is not only a veterinarian, she is a bear hunter. She is a dog breeder. Her and her husband Chris raise Blueticks. They have raised numerous litters over the last several years. So this not only comes from years of working as a veterinarian, but also being a hunter, being a dog breeder, and understanding the way that houndsmen operate. So some great advice in here, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So back on the podcast once again, Dr. Erin Dove. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Last time we talked more about yours and your husband Chris's Blueticks, but today we're going to dive into your profession and what you do and all of your knowledge.
Okay.
So I kind of want to start with, like I said, planning ahead and looking towards before you make a cross. Like, what do you do? What do you I mean, obviously there's a lot of things people can do, but what do you recommend? What do you think is a bare minimum best practice kind of stuff?
Sure. I mean, you want to make sure the dogs that you're breeding are healthy. They don't have lots of genetic issues. There's not a requirement like by the breed groups in coonhounds, or at least most of them don't have a lot of recommended genetic health testing, but I do think that there are a lot of dogs that have hip and elbow dysplasia, even in coonhound breeds, that go unnoticed. 1, because they're really stoic and they don't show pain, but 2, because they might see subtle things like, oh, well, the dog at 3 or 4 years old it doesn't hunt as hard, or it doesn't seem to keep up with my other dogs anymore, and they just attribute it to getting burnt out. But I've seen a lot of them that actually do have hip and elbow dysplasia. So, I mean, I think, do I think everybody's going to test their dogs get x-rays of them before they breed them? No. But I think it's something that everyone should consider, if you have a dog that maybe comes from lines that have questionable things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to think about. The biggest thing would be, does your dog do its job, what it's supposed to do? and do it well, and does it hold up to what you're doing? And a lot of times you're going to find if your dog does hold up to hard hunting and doesn't have a problem with that, then it's probably not likely going to have a lot of bone structural problems. But there are a lot of people out there with hounds that are starting to do this genetic testing, like the hip and elbow x-rays to OFA. And, some people send out the thyroids. I know there's been a lot of issues with thyroid problems in hounds. Those are all things that are genetic. So something to think about before you breed your dog. Is there things that might be a thyroid issue or in this line, or is there some of them seem to struggle or limp after they run really hard? Then that might warrant you looking into that further before you breed your dog. But I think the other thing to think about is it going to contribute to your breed in a positive way? Is it have good attributes that would better your breed? Whether that be conformationally or hunting wise, not just making a cross to just have puppies.
So not breeding handy to ready, huh?
Right, exactly. And the other thing is, of course, considering like if you have a female, what stud you're going to use, because there's a lot of options out there, and trying to breed dogs together that complement each other. By that, I mean, if you have a flaw in your dog, finding a dog that is strong in that aspect. If your dog's not a great tree dog, then maybe you need to look into finding a harder tree dog. If your dog lacks good feet, then you want to kind of find a dog that complements that to make that cross better.
Yeah.
So that, I think when you're considering breeding your dog, those are things to think about if you want to contribute to your breed and make it better.
Yeah. And that's one thing I know you've done a lot of with AI and stuff. And I don't want to delve into the whole AI thing a whole lot, but because you did a whole podcast with Heath Hyatt on that I thought was great. Right. So I'd rather just say people should go listen to that instead of having you repeat yourself. But the options are endless with AI. Like you can literally breed a dog across the country, never have to send your female.
Exactly. And I think, you don't have to breed to the dog next door anymore. That allows you lots of options, and that should allow you to make the best possible crosses. So when you're looking at studs, don't limit yourself to something within driving area, because, a lot of places can collect and ship chilled or frozen semen to you, and you can breed to anything.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, though, you definitely need to plan for that, because that's something that you can't just spur of the moment decide to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to absolutely time your female cycle with, hormone checking their progesterones and getting it shipped at a certain time so that it gets there at an optimal time and you use it right away. Those are big things to consider if you're using something like that. So that's the other thing. Are you going to do a natural breeding? Are you going to do a surgical AI? Are you going to do fresh chilled semen shipped in an AI that way? All things to consider when you're breeding your dog.
Mm-hmm. And at the same point, I will also say, while that AI is a great option for it is costly. There's a lot of work to it. So, sometimes you just gotta, if that's gonna be a stumbling block for you, you just gotta jump in the truck and go.
Right.
If you want to breed to the best, Yeah.
And, you're going to get, if you're breeding a natural service, you're going to get a higher likelihood of conception. That's the most potent semen you've got. So that, and yes, the expense of having things shipped and checking those hormone levels and potentially having the female AI or surgical AI can add up to anywhere from hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending. So that's things that you should consider before you make those decisions.
Yeah. Is there anything else pre-breeding that you think that we should be looking at?
I think that, covers the general basis of what you're looking at. Of course, making sure your female is healthy, that she doesn't have any problems. That's the biggest thing, but that's not something that is too difficult to assess.
Yeah. Well, so we make this cross, and now we've got a pregnant female. What's your recommendation for taking care of that pregnant female? Well, hopefully pregnant.
So, yes. So, for the first, 3 to 4 weeks, not a whole lot changes. I mean, you can still exercise your dog. You can still hunt your dog. You definitely don't. Those first 3 weeks can be also, though, kind of the most important developmentally for the puppies. So you don't want to expose her to diseases. I mean, I wouldn't go take her in the first 3 weeks to a bunch of dog shows or something like that. I wouldn't give her a bunch of medicines or anything like that at that point in time. Usually we recommend, for the first 3 weeks of pregnancy in a dog, not giving them any kind of medications if you can avoid it.
Okay.
Then, we're going to kind of progress to dogs don't really have trimesters, but we can call it that for the sake of the argument.
Yeah.
The next 3 weeks, she's going to start to get a little bit bigger. At 21 to 28 days is really kind of the best time to ultrasound a female if you're wanting to know if she's pregnant. So that's an option to, find out. It's not a great way to get a number, but it is a good way to assess if she is pregnant and, start planning for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you can certainly do that. And we don't really tend to increase their food until the last 3 weeks. So, of course, dogs have a gestation period of about 63 days, roughly 9 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep her food the same. Nothing really changes until we get to those last 3 weeks, and then you'll probably up her food just a little bit. I mean, maybe 25% increase. You still don't have to give her a lot. She's going to use more calories when she's making milk than when she's making puppies. So.
Yeah. I've heard some people talk about additives or switching foods. Do you recommend any of that?
I don't typically recommend switching food unless so most people are going to be feeding a sport dog diet.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look on your bag, it's going to tell you if it's formulated for all life stages. And if it does, then that means it's good for adults, puppies, nursing, pregnant females, pretty much. So if you're feeding a sport dog diet, most of the time you're fine and you don't need to switch food. If you're just on an adult maintenance diet, then you could switch her over to a puppy food in the last 3 weeks. But if you're on another food, there's really no need to switch because it can just cause more GI upset than anything. So, and I'd say most people listening to your podcast are probably feeding a food for all life stages because they have hunting dogs.
Now, is the big reason, I've heard that for years, is always switching a female to puppy food. Is that basically just because puppy food's higher in protein and fat than a standard maintenance diet? Or is there something else in there?
There is a little bit more calcium. We have to be kind of careful with calcium supplementation before puppies are born because if you do supplement calcium before, it can actually make them more prone to developing a low calcium or milk fever when they have puppies. So that's why I don't recommend giving any calcium supplements until after puppies are born. But, there's not a huge drastic difference in adult food versus puppy food in the level of calcium. So that's not going to make a huge difference if you switch over. It's more for the extra calories. It's more nutrient dense. Mm-hmm. So they don't tend to have quite as much room on their stomach to eat as much, so you kind of have to feed them more of a nutrient-dense formula.
Gotcha.
Their stomach's smaller.
Makes sense.
Or compressed more so.
Mm-hmm. So now we're to where I'm currently sitting right now. Literally any day now, I'm about, well, not me, but Fossil out here is about to drop puppies. So what do we need on hand? What should we be expecting?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is have a thermometer, because you can check their temperature morning and evening for probably, the week leading up to gestation. And usually, not all dogs, but a lot of dogs will have a temperature drop 12 to 24 hours before they go into labor. And that's usually less than 99 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of the time it kind of depends on your dog, and that's why I tell people to start like about a week before, so you can see what their normal runs in the morning and evening and notice if there's that 1.5 to 2 degree change. And that's going to be your signal to she should go into labor soon. So that's kind of helpful. I mean, if you have used like progesterones timing your female, then we can time the labor down to usually within a day or two with that.
Okay.
So that's kind of a benefit of using those, even if you're not doing AI breeding or shoulder frozen semen. Progesterones can be helpful to know exactly when she's due and when she could be overdue.
Okay.
But if you don't have that, then you can always use the old temperature method, and it works in most dogs. Some dogs don't really have a major temperature drop, and then they just surprise you, and that happens. But that's one thing you can do, like the week leading up to her labor, is kind of chart that down and give you an idea of when she should go into labor.
Okay.
The other things the week before, make sure you've got her whelping box set up. So, there's lots of different whelping boxes out there, ideas out there. Some people like to use little kiddie swimming pools. Some people like to actually build like a box with rails around it. The rails are kind of nice because they keep them from laying on them or smashing them into a corner. But, if you don't have the money for all that, then a kiddie pool works in most cases just as well. Just don't get quite, the rails for the added security.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't recommend using any kind of shaving bedding in there, especially when she's getting ready to have the puppies, because it just makes a huge mess and it sticks to everything, and then puppies can get them in their mouth. I typically use like old carpet or rugs or something that you can clean up pretty easy, and it's still like kind of nice bedding. Some people like to use shredded paper. That works pretty well because you can just clean the box out easy after she's done and put something else down. But
okay,
those are kind of probably the best options. Old blankets, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are probably the best options. If it's hot, then you may just go with like a rubber mat or something in there that's not as insulating.
Yeah.
I would say, having on hand, I would have sometimes having just some dental floss, because if she doesn't chew off the placentas and umbilical cord, you can tie them off with that. Just some dental floss.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have a little suctioner, like a snot sucker.
Yep.
Is what they would for kids. It works good for puppies, clearing out their throat or their nose if you need to. Most cases, mom's going to do all the work for you, but it's good to have those things on hand in case you would need them.
Yeah. Ideally, I think that's the goal is mom takes care of it, but sometimes
right.
Sometimes we need to step in.
Right. And of course, some towels. Towels are always helpful.
Okay.
As far as like things to look out for, we could definitely touch on that.
Yeah.
Things that might be a problem.
Yeah.
If typically they're going to be in what's called stage 1 labor for 12 to 24 hours. And that's just, they don't want to eat. You might see them like shivering or shaking, whining a lot, nesting a lot. And that's kind of like before labor. They call it stage 1 labor, but they're not in active labor. They're just getting ready.
Okay.
And then stage 2 labor is when we actually have, puppies being born in abdominal contractions. So that's going to start off our whelping process. If we have like more than 30 to 60 minutes of her actively pushing, you can see her pushing with her abdominal muscles and she's not delivering a puppy within those 30 to 60 minutes, that's a problem. We could have a puppy stuck or puppy's too big, something's going on there. The first thing to do would probably be to assess, hey, is the puppy coming out the right way? Can I reposition it or help her get this puppy out? If not, then you probably need to seek veterinary attention right away, because the longer that puppy is in there, the more likely they are to not survive.
Yeah.
Other things would be if she has more than 4-hour break between puppies. Sometimes they'll have a couple of puppies and then they'll take a break for a while. But if she's had a puppy and then 3 or 4 hours later there's nothing and she doesn't seem to be progressing, and you know that there are more puppies in there, then that's a concern. And then the other thing that's probably the biggest thing people don't notice is if there's some green discharge and you don't see a puppy within 30 minutes, that's a problem. That's a signal that the placenta is separated from that puppy, and so it's not going to survive if it doesn't get out of there. So those are the biggest things I tell people to look out for. Those are signals of an emergency, and that you should get a hold of your vet.
Mm-hmm. That's great information. Like I said, I've whelped a couple litters on, and other than one, most of them I've not been around for. Like, they happened overnight or during the day while I wasn't home. Only one time was I ever at home to actually get to see the litter born. So, I mean, that's really good information that I didn't know, and because I just never really got to see the whole process, and other than once. So,
one other thing I would say to keep on hand is have some. I do like the Oral Cal. It's like a gel, and I mean they have it on like the Revival Animal Health. They're really big on having reproductive stuff and supplements, but they have like a calcium tube there, and that can really help if your female is in labor. They tell you to give like so much between puppies, but it can really help speed up the labor, calcium, because if they're a little low in calcium, they're not going to contract their muscles very well and push puppies out. So that's something I like to have on hand.
And where did you say you can get that? And what's it called?
You can get it on revivalanimalhealth.com.
Okay.
It's like a calcium gel, Oral Cal gel, but it's nice to have on hand. So if she's a little bit stalled, you can give that, and sometimes it can really help.
Mm-hmm. Good to know.
Some people will, they'll ask me about oxytocin, and oxytocin is one of those things that it really needs to be used sparingly and in certain situations, because if you give it at the wrong time, it can make things worse.
Okay.
So I typically don't recommend giving oxytocin unless you've had your dog assessed by the vet and they've determined that, she can have the puppies on her own. Usually the only time I'll use that is if I know she can have them on her own and she maybe had like 10 puppies and she's just really tired and running out of steam, because that's called what we call uterine inertia, and that when they kind of use up all their oxytocin and they don't have enough to push the rest of the puppies out, that's about the only time I'll use it. But if you use it and you don't realize, that a puppy's stuck in the canal or it's positioned the wrong way, it can cause uterine ruptures, and it can cause the uterus to contract too much on those puppies and cause it to be even harder for them to be birthed. So I don't recommend using that unless you have consulted with your vet.
Okay. Conkeys Outdoors is proud to be a sponsor of Tree Talking Time. Family, hunting, tradition is the Conkeys motto. They understand the importance of passing down the tradition of hound hunting. They are a family-owned business that treats you like family. They also understand the importance of having the gear you need when you need it. Conkeys carries everything for your next hunt, and it ships to your door quick. They also offer great warranties on all tracking systems and financing options. Check them out at conkeys.com. You can also use the code TreeTalkingTime5 in all caps to save as well.
What other questions do you have about birthing?
Or is there anything else we should be looking for mom before we move on to puppies?
Right. And after she has puppies, you're going to notice a discharge for probably about a week. This should be at first, sometimes it's like a more of a clear red, and as it progresses, it might be like a dark red, but it shouldn't be a large volume of that. If you're seeing a lot of blood or she's having like a milky or colored discharge, then that's a major concern that there could be an infection or hemorrhaging present. So that's something to get looked at. If you're seeing just, she's dropping little drops of clear red fluid for about a week and it gets a little bit brown or dark red towards the end of that week, then that's normal.
Okay.
Monitoring her too for her mammary glands, make sure that you can express them so the puppies can get milk out of them. Make sure they're not really hot or firm or swollen.
Mm-hmm.
Mastitis, of course, is something we want to look for, and that can start as soon as she starts producing milk.
Okay.
A lot of people will have more of a mastitis problem when they're weaning dogs, but it doesn't always happen that way. So I tell everyone to keep an eye on that daily. Some mastitises can really progress quickly and get a dog really, really sick and septic. So catching things early is always a good thing.
Yeah. So now we've got mom taken care of, and now we've got a litter of puppies on the ground. So what do you recommend for puppies?
So I wanted to kind of touch base on a few things that I do and I think are helpful that are more like, extras, and that's called early neurologic stimulation, which is where the military's used this for a long time, and they've done this on their puppies, and it's been shown to improve their heart rate, make them more resistant to diseases, make them more tolerant to stress, make them better working dogs. So it's you start it on day 3, you do it until day 16, and it's just a series of basically little exercises you do with each puppy, and it's 3 to 5 seconds per exercise, so it's really quick. It doesn't take long, and there's 5 sets of exercises in it. The first one is just to hold your puppy upright, head up, butt in your palm of your hand, just kind of holding them that way. You hold them like that for 3 to 5 seconds. The second exercise is to actually hold the puppy upside down with their head down, butt up, and do that for 3 to 5 seconds. Third one's laying the puppy on their back on your hand. So do that for 3 to 5 seconds. And the fourth one is called tactical stimulation. So you can use like a Q-tip and just kind of rub it between the paw pads and on the paw pads for 3 to 5 seconds. And the fifth one is called thermal stimulation. So cool cloth that's been in the wet cloth that's been in the fridge for 20 minutes. You hold that to their belly for 3 to 5 seconds.
Okay.
And you don't want to ever go over the 3 to 5 seconds. You don't want to ever do it more than once a day. But it's basically exposing those puppies to little amounts of stress for their body to kind of adapt and get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been shown to be really helpful, make puppies have more exploratory behaviors, be more active, be more tolerant to new situations. So I do that with all of mine, and I feel like it makes a difference. So I think that's a good thing to do, and it doesn't take very long. And if it helps,
yeah,
it's
why
worth
wouldn't
it.
you? No, and you're not the first person I've seen that does that. I know of a few other houndsmen that do that as well, and they've also said that they think it makes a big difference.
And then there is another set called early scent introduction, and that is done on days 3 to 16 also, where you expose the puppy to a new scent every day. It can be raccoon scent one day. It could be smell of dirt, some leaves. It could be cinnamon, any of whatever scent. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, you don't want something really caustic that's going to burn their nostrils or anything. But you just expose them to a new scent once a day for days 3 to 16. And it's supposed to kind of help them, their olfactory stimulation, and help them kind of use their nose better as they get older.
Okay.
I have used that, though. One of the last litters I used, I can't say that I noticed a difference from that litter from the other litters, but, that's one litter, so I can't judge off of that either. But if again, one of those things, like, it's not going to hurt anything to do.
Now, when you say expose them to a scent, especially when they're really little, how do you expose them to that?
You just kind of put it up towards their nose. I mean, holding them in your hand and just putting it up to their nose. So, I mean, if you've got, like, coon scent on a rag or a bottle, just kind of letting them waft it from their nose for about 30 seconds. Okay. You can use any kind of scent. I avoided any deer scent or anything like that. If you don't want them to run that, I probably would avoid that. But if you're running deer dogs, then you might want to expose them to deer scent.
Yep.
Whatever you're running or you anticipate your puppies to be exposed to or be running, I would definitely incorporate that in there somewhere. But it's more of just trying to get them to learn to use their nose basically at a young age.
Nice. Now, what do you recommend for deworming and shots for puppies?
Sure. So I always recommend starting deworming puppies at 2 weeks because they can get hookworms as early as 2 weeks. And many dogs, even if they don't have any worms in their stool, they will be encysted in their tissues, like their mammary tissues, and when they birth puppies, they come out into the mammary tissues and into the milk. So even if you had your fecal checked on your dog and it was negative, I still would recommend deworming them, the puppies. I do it at 2, 4, 6, and 8 weeks, using either like Strongid or Pyrantel is the name of it, or like a Safeguard. Those are safe for young puppies, and that kind of tends to take care of it. I like to use the Pyrantel from 2, 4, and 6 weeks typically because it's a pretty low volume that you have to give them. Mm-hmm. And at 8 weeks, I usually do 3 days of the Safeguard because it just kind of seems to cover more as far as, like, we have a lot of resistant parasites anymore, and I think that the Safeguard tends to do a little bit better job on those, like resistant roundworms and hookworms. So I like to do that one around 6 or 8 weeks. I'll do 3 days of that.
Okay.
They are old enough for their first vaccine at 6 weeks old. And I think we should probably touch on like how vaccines kind of work in puppies.
Yeah.
So the reason we kind of do boosters or giving them several series of vaccines is because they get antibodies from the colostrum in their mom's milk. The colostrum is they're going to get that for the first 1 or 2 days. After that, they're not getting it anymore. So a lot of people ask, well, they're still nursing off mom. I can't give them shots. But it doesn't matter. It's the colostrum that had the antibodies in it, not the milk. Mm-hmm. So it's fine. We do it. We started at 6 weeks because that's as early as those antibodies can start to wane. But it can take up to 16 weeks for them to those antibodies they get from mom's colostrum to completely go away. So usually I recommend giving those vaccines, your distemper parvos, from every 3 to 4 weeks, from 6 weeks to 14 to 16 weeks. And that typically will get you covered. There is something that you can send out. It's escaping me right now what it's called, but it's actually, you can send it out, I think, on the mom, and it'll tell you when to give the puppies vaccines. It tells you like the antibody time, and you can send it out to a lab. So that's something some people like to do. For some reason, I can't remember the name of it now. It's escaping me. But there is something you could send out if you wanted to know when the proper time to vaccinate, if you were worried about over-vaccination or anything like that. But that's kind of more so breeder by breeder basis on how you feel about those things. So,
when do you wean puppies?
I start feeding them soft food at around 2 to 3 weeks, usually around 3 weeks. If I have a mom that's not making a lot of milk, you can start as early as 2 weeks. And what I usually do is I take the puppy food that I'm feeding them. And for me, I feed the same food to my adult dogs and my puppies.
Okay.
Because it's in all life stages. So I just, that way they all have the same and it doesn't matter. I don't have to feed mom and puppy separate. But I soak it in some warm water, or you can even use, like, some people like to use puppy milk replacer. Personally, I just kind of use warm water and then let it get all mushy. And I have a little blender that I blend it up into like a soup the first time. So it's really soupy. And I just kind of let them have a big pan and dive into it. It usually takes, 3 or 4 days before they figure out how to eat it. They kind of smash their faces in it and they figure it out. And then sometimes I always let mom clean it up, and they usually watch her and figure it out that way too. But you can do it as early as 3 weeks, introducing that. And then I usually kind of, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I start out doing it 2 or 3 times a day. Usually it's 2 times a day because I'm at work during the day, so I can't come home and feed them. But I start out with that mushy soup 2 or 3 times a day at 3 weeks old. And then when they're eating it pretty good at 4 weeks old, they're getting it a couple times a day. And I'm making it less and less soupy and more like soft dog food consistency.
Yeah.
You could use like a canned puppy food or something and mush it down that way if you don't want to. I just have the food on hand, so I mush it up and put it in a blender. So it's whatever's easier for you, but either way is fine. And I feel like if I'm taking the dry food and making it mushy, then I'm not really keep changing their food,
Exactly.
For me, it's easier that way. And I do want to say I do add like a probiotic into it for the puppies too, because it really helps. A lot of people notice some diarrhea and stuff when they start eating puppy food and they're transitioning from milk to puppy food. So I use probiotics in it too. I use like a powder and put it and mix it in, and that helps a lot.
Okay.
And you can also, I do like to give mom a packet of probiotics every day after she's whelped the puppies. And you can even use it before she's whelped the puppies. It's safe. But it's been shown to help with prevention of like mastitis and uterine infections and things post-whelping. So that can be a really beneficial thing. I like Fortiflora, but there's all kinds of ones out there. I just would definitely use a dog-specific one because they have different, microbiome than we do.
Yeah.
Then I guess that kind of covers the vaccines. I kind of went off on a tangent there, I think. But so at 6 weeks, you can start their distemper parvas, and then I'll usually give them. I like to send mine home to their homes around 9 weeks. So I like them to have 2 vaccines before they leave, and I do 6, 9, 12, and 16. But some people do 6, 8, 12, and 16 weeks. But I usually recommend doing at least up until they're 14 weeks old with those. And I don't typically start the lepto until they're around 12 weeks because that is one that does cause more reactions than the others. So I like to wait till they're a little bit older to add in like the lepto vaccine. But I do that at 12 and 16 weeks. So.
Okay. Well, I think that answers all of my questions. If there's anything else that you have that you think we should know.
I guess I would go on to say, like, when you're raising puppies, there's lots of things you can do as they're developing to kind of help build their confidence and help with things they're going to encounter down the road. So one thing is their ears and their eyes are opening around 2 weeks old. So I don't really do a lot of noise stuff until they're like 4 or 5 weeks, but that's when I start kind of introducing some noises when I feed them, banging on pans and getting them used to like sound. This is basically sound conditioning them to gunfire. Once they get to be about 6 weeks, we'll break out the blank pistol, 22 blank pistol, and we'll start shooting rounds while they're eating their food just to get them used to those noises. Mm-hmm. Even like playing a radio when you're gone in the where they're at can help them get used to noises like people talking and things like that. That makes them less skittish around those noises. They're familiar with them. You can even get you can download sounds and soundtracks and stuff that have buses and all kinds of thunder and everything to kind of get them used to all kinds of things. But that's always a good thing to do, and it's pretty easy, put a radio on and let them listen to it while you're gone.
Yeah.
And I usually, spending time with them and exposing them to different things. Like, I don't think you should take them out to Walmart and expose them to all kinds of disease or anything, but you should, there's places like that will let you bring them in that there's not a lot of other dogs around when they're, 6 weeks old or so, getting them used to kids, or, maybe you take them. I know some people have had friends that work at a bank and they've taken puppy litters into the bank, or they put them in a cart in Tractor Supply so they're not, touching the floor and stuff, but they take them in there and kind of get them used to that kind of stuff. And that stuff's really important, I think. And I think it gets overlooked because we kind of figure, that's the job of the person who gets the puppy, but they really start developing that socialization period at 5 and 6 weeks old. And so if you can start exposing them to those things at that age, it's helpful.
Yeah.
I also kind of do little obstacle courses for my puppies. So they have tunnels and stairs and teeter-totters and things and just uneven ground and wobble boards that we've made, and we put them, usually when they're 5 or 6 weeks old, we'll break those out and kind of let them play on those, and it really builds their confidence. They're going to be encountering a lot of things like that in the woods, and if they've seen those kind of things and learn to go through obstacles and around them, I've noticed it makes a huge difference when you start taking those puppies to the woods. They have the agility, they've learned to maneuver through things from a young age. So those are things you can do that are not very hard. I mean, you can buy a cheap tunnel on Amazon or Chewy, and you can buy those kind of things and you can make them. I mean, we made a teeter-totter out of scrap wood. It's not, something you have to spend a fortune on. You don't have to buy these like $500 things on the internet. You can make things. You can take like a kiddie pool and throw a bunch of empty bottles that crinkle in it and just let them play in there and throw treats in it and get them to get used to the noise and foraging through things and using their nose. I mean, those are just simple things. At a young age, before they leave, you can really develop them before they leave.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I think that you could be doing that I think make a big impact on them long term.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, dogs they're kind of like kids. I always tell people, like, the earlier you introduce them and teach them things, the more open-minded they are, and the quicker they learn. If you wait till they're a year old, like, you've missed out on a lot of opportunities for them to use their brain and learn to use their brain.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us all this information, Erin. the one thing I would like to ask is, some of these products that you really like, maybe you could kind of send me some links and we can throw that in the show notes for people.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
So that way, all that information is quickly and easily available to people. So,
yeah.
Like I said, I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tree Talking Media. And until next time, keep them talking in the timber.